The house was quiet again. Not the deep, empty quiet of loneliness, but the kind that wraps around you like a thick blanket. Safe, dim, still. The only sound was the rain tapping against the window, and the hum of the kettle heating on the stove. He'd just come home, with her. His girlfriend. Her first time sleeping over. Not just staying late, but staying. And I could tell. From the moment they stepped through the door. They didn't really know what that meant yet. She kept her arms folded across her chest like she was hiding something. Her eyes darting around, cataloging everything, the pictures, the couch, me. And he was doing that boyish thing. Trying to act chill, like this was normal. Like this was easy. But I saw how tight he held her hand. I saw the way he kept glancing at me. Like he was checking to see if this was okay. If he was okay. I smiled. Soft. Reassuring. I didn't say anything, just turned back toward the kitchen, let them settle. The lights were low, just the glow from 2 standing lamps in the corners. The kind of lighting that softens every hard edge. Makes people feel safe. Or maybe exposed, if they're not ready. I poured the tea. Chamomile. Gentle. Warm. Something you offer someone you want to take care of. When I came back into the room, they were still by the door. He fumbled with her jacket. Tried to slide it off her shoulders like he'd seen in movies. It caught on one sleeve. She giggled and winced at the same time. Like her body wasn't sure which one to land on. And my breath caught. Not because of what they were doing, but because of what I remembered. That aching vulnerability. The clumsiness of being seen. Being touched when you're still figuring out what that even means. First times are rarely perfect, but they deserve to be. Safe. Tender. Held. I set the tea on the side table, and as I passed them, I brushed her shoulder with mine. Not by accident. Not overtly either. Just enough to say, "You're okay. You're welcome here." She looked up at me. Eyes wide. A little uncertain. And I smiled again. "You can sit wherever you like," I said softly. "I'll be in the chair if you need anything." They moved to the couch. Hesitantly. He sat first, then patted the cushion beside him. She sat down stiffly, like it might bite her. He reached for the tea I'd made. Took a sip. Offered it to her. She hesitated. Then drank from the same spot his lips had touched. I saw that. That unspoken connection. And something in me stirred. Not desire. Not yet. It was something older than that. Protective. Curious. Tender. He draped an arm around her shoulder, but it landed too high, like he wasn't sure where to hold her. She leaned into him. But not all the way. Like she was still asking, "Can I trust this closeness? Can I trust myself?" I watched from the chair, pretending to scroll through my phone. But I was fully there. In that moment with them. Feeling their tension like it was happening to me. Feeling her doubt. His hesitation. And all I wanted was to soften the space between them. So I got up. Quietly. Crossed to the linen drawer. Pulled out a soft throw blanket, one I knew smelled like lavender. The one I always used when I needed comfort. I walked back toward them. They looked up. And I smiled again. "Here," I said gently. "For her." He took it from my hands. Our fingers brushed. There was heat. Surprise. Recognition. And then he draped the blanket over her lap. Tucked it around her knees. Like a child mimicking something he'd seen. Trying to offer care. But looking to me for instruction. She murmured, "Thank you." But it was to me. Not him. And I nodded. Then I did something small. Simple. But deliberate. I sat back down. On the same couch. At the far end. But close enough that the warmth of them reached me. I didn't crowd them. I didn't interfere. But I was present. And somehow, that gave them permission. His hand slid lower, more certain. Her body eased into his. Their rhythm began to match. Breath. Touch. Stillness. And I sat there. Quiet. Not intruding. But available. And I don't know how else to explain it. But it felt like something was building. Not just for them, but inside me, a tension that had nothing to do with sex, and everything to do with yearning. Not for him, not for her, but for the honesty of it. The purity. The way they wanted to connect but didn't quite know how. And somewhere deep in my bones, I remembered that feeling. I missed it. I ached for it. To be new again. To be seen by someone who hadn't already formed a picture of who you're supposed to be. To be touched not for what you've done or how you've changed, but just for being alive in someone's arms. And I realized I wasn't watching them out of curiosity. I was watching them out of longing. Because sometimes, when you've gone years giving love, you forget what it feels like to receive it. And sitting there, on that couch, with rain dancing on the glass, and two hearts trying to learn each other beside me, I started to wonder, was it really wrong to want to help them feel safe? To help them connect in a way that didn't leave scars? Was it really so terrible to want to offer what I'd once needed so badly myself? I didn't know the answer yet, but I knew this. Something was shifting in them, in me, in us, and I had no idea where it was going, only that it had already begun. It's strange how someone else's tenderness can bring up your own emptiness. I sat on that couch, just a few feet away from them, watching them explore each other slowly, nervously, like they were feeling their way through a dark room for the first time. And it wasn't envy I felt. Not exactly. It was something older, quieter, like an ache in a place you forgot was still tender. Because I remembered my first time. I remembered the silence afterward more than anything else. How fast it all happened. How little I was asked. How much I gave just to feel chosen. No candlelight. No care. Just pressure and expectation and a boy who didn't know any better. And afterward, I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror, wondering if something in me had changed forever. And if that change was even worth it. Nobody told me it could be beautiful, or slow, or sacred. Nobody told me I was allowed to want safety before surrender. And watching her now, the girl beside him, tucked into that lavender blanket, her fingers twitching under the fabric like she didn't know what to do with them. I saw me, not the woman I am now, the girl I used to be, the girl no one protected, the girl no one guided. And when she looked at me, really looked at me, there was something in her gaze that unwrapped me like a gift I hadn't opened in years. It wasn't sexual. Not then. It was seeking. She looked at me like she wanted permission, guidance. Like she was waiting for anyone to say, "It's okay to want this. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to not know how." And part of me, part I've buried for years, wanted to give it to her. Not to take anything, not to intrude, but to offer what I never got. Because here's the truth. After my marriage ended, after he left, emotionally first, then physically, I stopped being touched. Not just sexually. I mean touched. The kind of touch that says, "I see you. I want you. You're not invisible." He used to brush past me in the hallway like I wasn't even there. Used to make love with his eyes closed. Used to check his phone right after. So I stopped reaching. Stopped asking. Stopped needing. Or so I told myself. But no matter how numb you become, no matter how much time passes, there's still that little thread of longing inside, wound tight, waiting, hoping to be pulled. And sitting there, on that couch, watching my stepson with all his sweetness and awkward effort, try to hold this trembling girl like she was made of glass. That thread started to unravel. He's a kind boy, gentle, honest, but he doesn't know what he's doing. Not really. Not yet. He kisses her like he's asking for forgiveness. Touches her like she might vanish if he tries too hard. And she wants to explore. I can see it in the way her body leans forward, then pulls back. In the way she bites her lip, but doesn't make a sound. She's curious, but she doesn't have a map. And I remembered being exactly where she is, wanting to feel everything, but not knowing how to ask, wanting to open, but too afraid to speak the words. And all I could think was, what if someone had sat with me that night? What if someone had whispered, "It doesn't have to hurt. It doesn't have to be rushed. You're allowed to feel good too." What if someone had looked at me with care, not with need? And maybe it's selfish. Maybe it's crazy. But that night, something in me wanted to be that person. Not for them to worship, not to control, but to hold space, to soften the room, to make it safe enough for them to feel. And maybe, to remember how it feels to be needed. Because no one had looked at me like that in years. No one had asked me not with words, but with eyes. What do I do next? Is this okay? Can I trust you? But she did. And so did he, without even knowing it. It wasn't about lust. It was about invitation. The unspoken kind. The kind you feel in your chest before you understand it with your mind. And in that moment, I wasn't their stepmother. I wasn't the ex-wife. I wasn't the woman cleaning up teacups and folding blankets. I was present. I was a woman. A witness. A mirror. And I could feel it coming. A question none of us had said out loud yet. But it was in the air. Thick. Sweet. Inevitable. Not because we planned it, but because all three of us had been starving. And suddenly, the idea of going back to my room alone, pulling the covers tight, pretending I wasn't shaking, it felt unbearable. Because once your eyes adjust to intimacy, darkness becomes harder to live in, and something was about to shift. I could feel it. In him. In her. In me. Not a choice yet. Not a decision. Just the knowing that this night was going to ask something of me. And I didn't know what I would say. But I knew. I wanted to be asked. The house was quiet. Rain still whispered against the windows, softer now, like the sky was calming down after a long cry. The guest room door had closed gently behind her an hour ago. She'd gone to bed early, tucked under the lilac quilt, smiling but unsure. I could tell she needed rest. But I wasn't sure if he'd sleep. He was still up, sitting at the edge of the couch like he didn't know where else to go. Like he was holding something he didn't have permission to put down. I stayed in the kitchen a little longer than I needed to, washed a dish, dried it slowly. Sometimes, it's not about what's said. It's about what's left unsaid, hanging there like fog between two people. Thick enough to feel, thin enough to ignore if you tried hard enough. But neither of us was trying anymore. I finally sat down beside him. A little distance between us, but not enough to pretend we weren't connected. He was quiet at first, just looking at the flicker of the candle I'd left on the table. And then, softly, "Can I ask you something?" I looked at him. He wasn't a boy in that moment. He was a young man trying so hard to be good, to get it right, to not break the heart in the other room. "Of course," I said, gently. No judgment. Just air. Just space. He took a breath, like the words were sharp. What if I messed this up? God. That question went straight through me. Because it wasn't about tonight. It was about everything. I nodded slowly. "You won't. If you listen. If you care." He looked down, fidgeted with the seam of his shirt. "But how do I know what she wants?" His voice cracked just a little. Not from weakness. From wanting to get it right. I felt something ache in my chest. That kind of aching that lives right between empathy and memory. I leaned in just slightly, my voice low. Not seductive. Not dramatic. Just real. Just honest. "Would you want me to show you?" And then, silence. Not uncomfortable. Just deep. Long. Heavy with something unspoken. He didn't answer. Not with words. But the way his eyes didn't leave mine. The way he held that silence like it meant something. It was already said. And, for the first time in years, I didn't feel ashamed of what I was offering. Because it wasn't about taking. It wasn't about betrayal. It was about guiding. About being the kind of presence I wished I'd had. If I could give him confidence without shame. If I could let him practice tenderness in a place where no one would laugh, or flinch, or pull away, would that really be so wrong? Would it be worse to send him stumbling into someone else's heart, half knowing how to love her? I didn't want him to be careless. I wanted him to be sure. Not arrogant, just soft, with certainty. He swallowed hard. Still no words. But his hand was resting just close enough to mine that I could feel his heat. Not touching, but almost. And the almost was louder than anything else. I spoke first. Intimacy isn't about moves. It's about reading, feeling, slowing down enough to hear without sound. He nodded, eyes still fixed on me like I was explaining something sacred. And maybe I was. Every body speaks, I whispered. You just have to listen to it. Another pause. I could feel his heart beating, even from that space between us. He was holding back, trying to be respectful, trying to figure out the rules of this strange, quiet moment. So I broke it just a little. I shifted closer, not touching, just letting my presence fill in what his fear was trying to silence. I'm not offering this because I want anything from you, I said. I'm offering it because I see who you're trying to be. And because no one ever offered me this. And I know what it cost me. His throat tightened. I saw it. That tremor. That tremble of being seen. I just don't want to hurt her, he said. Barely more than a breath. Almost like a prayer. And that was the moment. Not when lips touched. Not when clothes fell away. But that raw, unfiltered fear of harming someone you care about. That matters. And that's when I realized. This wasn't about lust. This wasn't about rebellion or taboo. This was about care. And trust. And the weight of doing something real. Without being reckless. He looked up at me. Eyes glossy, vulnerable. And I didn't move. I just sat there. Letting him feel it. Letting him decide. I wouldn't reach for him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But the space was open now. The door was cracked. And we both knew. If we stepped through it, it would be quiet. And slow. And sacred. And nothing, from that point forward, would ever be the same again. The next evening unfolded like silk, slow, soft, a little slippery in the mind. The rain had passed. The sky was clear but quiet, like it knew not to speak too loud. Dinner had been simple grilled vegetables, roasted chicken, warm bread. Something grounding, familiar. She offered to help clean, and I let her. We stood side by side at the sink, our elbows brushing, sharing the rhythm of rinsing and drying. She giggled when the water splashed too high, apologized when a glass clinked too hard. But I just smiled. It wasn't the mess that mattered. It was this softness, this willingness, this reaching. Later, when the kitchen was quiet again, we sat in the living room. A bottle of red wine between us. She curled into one corner of the couch, legs tucked beneath her. He was on the floor, cross-legged, picking at a thread on the rug. I stayed in the middle between them, but not dividing. The first glass loosened her shoulders. The second one let her speak. Her voice was small at first. I've never really done this before, she said, staring at the wine in her hand like it might whisper back. I didn't push. I just listened. I mean things. With someone. Close things. She looked at him, then quickly looked away. And I want to be good. For him. A pause. I just don't know how. The room fell still. No music. No clock ticking. Just breath. Just presence. And in that moment, I saw me again. Years ago. Wanting so badly to be right, to be wanted. But terrified of doing the wrong thing. I set my glass down slowly and reached over, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You will be, I said softly. But what if I helped? Just to ease the nerves. She blinked. Curious. Uncertain. Open. He shifted slightly, sitting upright now. Not speaking. Just watching. Something between hope and disbelief in his eyes. I started small. Just touch. my hand grazing hers, the back of her wrist, the space just above her elbow. I told her to close her eyes, to take a breath in through her nose and out slowly through her mouth. Again and again, until her shoulders dropped, until the tension left her jaw. You don't have to perform, I said. You just have to feel. She nodded. Barely, but enough. I took her hands in mine, placed one over her own heart, the other over her stomach. Here's how you know what you want, I whispered. When this beats faster and this tightens with butterflies, that's your body asking to explore. She let out the smallest sound, a mix of awe and relief. I moved slowly, deliberately, showed her how to hold someone's face with intention. Not just a grab, but a gesture. How to cradle. How to invite. She mirrored me. Her hands were light but sincere, and when she opened her eyes, something had shifted. He was still silent, but his chest was rising faster now. I could see it, feel it. I reached for him then, took his hand, brought it to hers, guided fingers, skin to skin. Nothing rushed. No heat yet, just awareness. We weren't rushing. We were discovering. Together. I showed them how to match breath. To inhale together. To hold. To exhale slowly. She laughed when their rhythms clashed. He smiled, embarrassed. But I studied them again. I placed her hand over his, then mine over both. You're not here to impress, I said. You're here to understand. And that takes time. There was a moment quiet and golden where we just sat, our hands layered like pages in a story no one had read aloud before. Her eyes fluttered shut, and I leaned in, not for drama, not for permission, but for trust. I kissed her cheek, slowly, and just as I began to pull away, his hand reached for mine. Not to stop me, not to take over, but to join, to say yes, without needing words. And right then, I knew. We weren't tiptoeing around a line anymore. We were stepping across it together. And whatever came next, it would be honest. It would be tender. And it would be ours. She didn't pull away. Not from me. Not from him. Not from the idea that something was about to shift forever. I could feel it between us, this quiet thread of trust, like silk pulled tight. Delicate. Tense. Sacred, but unbroken. We sat on the edge of the moment like people watching the tide rise. It would reach us soon, and none of us were moving. Give me your hands, I said softly, turning toward her. She offered them like something precious, not out of fear but care. I placed my palms over hers, guided her fingers slowly across my forearm. Like this, I whispered. Slow, like it's the last time you'll ever touch someone. She followed, tentative, then more confident. Tracing, breathing, feeling. It wasn't about where she touched. It was about how. With attention, with warmth, with reverence. He watched, eyes wide, chest rising, silent but not absent. I reached for him next, gently guiding his hand to her shoulder. No rush, I murmured. Let her feel you before she sees you. His fingers trembled at first, but she didn't flinch. She leaned into it, into him. The three of us, hands brushing, knees touching, sat in that dim glow like a prayer was unfolding. Not spoken, just lived. Breath started to matter. The pace, the way it synced, one inhale pulling the others in. She turned toward him, lips slightly parted. He looked down, then up, searching for direction, for approval. I nodded. Just once. That was all he needed. He leaned in, not with greed, but gratitude. Their foreheads touched, then noses, then breath on breath. It wasn't lust. It was hunger layered in patience, trust, and reverence. He placed his hand gently over hers, and I placed mine on top. A small stack of courage. No words now. Only sensation. The warmth of skin. The pulse in wrists. The tremble in exhales. I felt something shift. Not outside in me, A calm authority. A knowing, not of power, but of responsibility. I leaned close to his ear, my voice barely a breath. Go slow. Follow her rhythm. She'll tell you everything if you listen. He nodded, eyes soft, but focused. He began to move, but watched me, waiting. Each time he looked, I gave him a whisper, a glance, a signal. She noticed. She felt it. Her eyes found mine and didn't look away. I took her hand and brought it to his chest. Feel that? I asked. It's not fear. It's care. He closed his eyes then. Like her hand had become a tether, and he was finally grounded. We were wrapped in something now. Not arms. Not desire. But attention. A collective breath. He lay back slightly uncertain. And I caught him. Not just his weight, but his heart. I guided one of her hands to his cheek, and the other to his ribs. Let him feel everything, I said. Where you're warm, where you're waiting. Then I added mine. To his shoulder. To the space between his fingers. He gasped not from pressure, but presence. Overwhelmed. Not in a way that shuts down, but opens, expands, releases. He was being held. Fully. By both of us. And we weren't taking. We were giving. There were no roles. No rules. No labels. Just warmth. And pulse. And permission. Time dissolved. The lights were still dim. The wine untouched. But everything felt brighter, closer, suspended. We weren't mother. Or lover. Or boy. We were pulse and skin and need. I sat behind him now. She in front. He cradled between us. His head resting lightly against my chest. Her forehead resting against his. I ran my fingers through his hair, slow, steady strokes. She whispered something I couldn't hear. But I saw his smile. It was small. And full. I pressed my hand over his heart. She mirrored it. Each of us anchoring him. Each of us holding a piece. There was no beginning, no end, just us. Hands. Breath. Lips on temples. Gazes like constellations trying to connect. The space was thick with emotion. The unspoken kind. The kind that doesn't ask questions because it already knows the answers. It wasn't a scene. It wasn't a seduction. It was medicine. For every rushed first time. For every moment we'd all felt unseen, unsure, unloved. We were healing. Each other. Ourselves. And in that warmth, in that long, drawn-out stillness, we surrendered. Not to the act, but to the feeling. The deep, quiet knowing that this, whatever it was real. And right now, it was enough. It happened slowly, not like a spark. More like a tide. First gentle, then overwhelming. Not because of what we did, but because of what we let go of. He wasn't a boy in that moment. And she wasn't afraid anymore. There was this sound. Not a moan, not a cry, but something between breath and belief. The sound of becoming. I'd never seen someone look that alive. Or that undone. And I wasn't outside of it either. I felt it inside me. A warmth uncoiling. Soft and thick and so very human. She wept. Not from pain, but from something like recognition. I didn't speak. I just reached for her. Held her face in my hands. Let her bury her cheek into my palm like a child. Like a woman. Like someone safe. And he reached for me. Fingers trembling. Not with guilt, but with awe. For a while none of us moved. No words. Just breath. And the weight of what had passed between us. A dam had broken, but it didn't flood us. It cleansed. I felt lighter. Like grief had been lifted from a place I didn't even know I carried it. Like all the years of silence and shame had been answered, finally, with presence. We weren't touching anymore. But we were closer than skin. He sat back, eyes wide, lips parted, as if he'd just tasted something eternal. She curled into my lap. And for a long moment, we simply breathed. 3 rhythms, sinking into one. The light in the room had dimmed on its own. Like even the world knew this moment was holy. And I was still. Not empty. Not spent. But full in a way I'd never been. He didn't move at first. Neither did she. Their bodies had folded into each other like gravity had claimed them. No tension. No shame. Just rest. She had her arm draped across his chest. Her face nestled in the curve of his neck. His hand, still half-curled, rested against her hip. Like he wasn't ready to let the moment slip away. And I sat there still as the room, breathing in their peace, soaking in something I didn't know I was starving for. Not the heat of it, but the quiet after. The truth of what remained when nothing was being asked, and everything was simply given. He looked at me once. Not startled, not apologetic. Just open. His eyes were wide, but soft, like he was seeing something for the first time. And what struck me most was that there was no guilt in him. Just reverence. Like he'd walked through a door he didn't know existed. And on the other side was himself. She stirred gently, adjusting in her sleep, as if trying to sink deeper into his warmth. Her lips parted, breath even. A tiny sound escaping like a sigh that had waited her whole life to be exhaled. And in that moment, I didn't feel the ache anymore. Not for touch. Not for love. Not for proof. I didn't need to reach anymore. I was whole. Not because I'd taken anything, but because something had finally been offered without fear. It was never about possession. It was about presence. About witnessing. About being part of a moment where no one had to pretend or protect or perform. Just breathe. Just be. And so I stood, slowly, like I didn't want to wake them. Like the room itself might break if I moved too fast. I brushed a stray hair from her face. Let my fingers trail, featherlight, across his shoulder. One last time. Then I turned and walked out, barefoot. No sound but the rain still whispering outside. I didn't take anything with me. Not even the blanket that had slipped from my lap. I left it all there. Because that moment didn't belong to me. It belonged to all of us. And as I stepped into the hallway, a strange stillness settled inside me. The kind that only comes when something aching finally stops. What we shared, it wasn't about bodies. Not really. It was about healing. About giving someone what you never had, so they don't spend a lifetime aching for it. That's the quiet truth beneath everything. But tell me this. If someone you loved needed guidance, would you give it? Even if it meant crossing a line? If the line was drawn by fear or by rules made long ago, would you still reach out? Is it wrong to help someone feel safe? If it means blurring what's expected? If it means trading certainty for tenderness? Would you rather they learn from pain or from love? These questions don't come with easy answers. And maybe that's the point. Because love is messy. Love is complicated. Love doesn't always fit inside the boxes we build. Sometimes loving someone means bending the rules. Sometimes it means holding space for the parts no one else sees. So tell me, what would you do? I'm genuinely curious. And if you've ever loved someone so deeply, you'd break the rules just to protect their softness. You're not alone. This is where the hidden stories come to breathe. This is Olivia Touching Tales. If this story touched something inside you, like and subscribe so we can keep sharing the stories we don't always say out loud. Thank you for being here.